on the instruction for people to set their settings?
Yeah, sure. Oh, which Zia are you talking to? Me or Zia?
Zia.
Zia.
So excited, so excited. Welcome, guys. We can see that you have already joined the call. We're just waiting a bit. We can see the numbers are climbing up. We're sitting at 15 participants for now. We'll probably just give it a minute, and then at 10 past, we will just get rolling with the program. But yeah. See what's up.
Are you frozen or is it me?
No,
okay,
I'm
fine.
I'm quiet. I'm quiet. I think I'll start shortly. Okay. Am I audible, guys? Can everyone hear me? I'll just try and put it up very closely. Z, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool.
Can hear you too, Bawinile.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Lorna. Guys, all participants that are on the call, if you guys could just go to the chat box and see the instructions from the AWCA office on how to set up your settings for the session today. If you just want to see the speakers, basically you just have to switch off or disable the non-video participants so you can get a better experience of the call. So I think I'm going to start now. It's 10 past. Welcome to everyone today. Thank you for making time for today's session. For the Career Lift Off, it's the fourth and final installment of our Career Lift Off for 2020. I facilitated the first session, which was Should I Stay or Should I Leave? And then we had other sessions that spoke more on the topics of industries, with the last one on Tuesday where we spoke about finance. And today we are focusing more on our public sector as well as our investment banking, which from our organizers, this was backed by popular demand because you guys are really, really interested in this sector. So tonight I have the amazing Lorna Moneti as well as Z Mngwangu, who's going to be co-hosting with me for this session. And we're just going to have a conversation around, I guess, the topics that we have. And if you guys have any questions, you are welcome to pop them on the chat box, and we'll read them and we'll get the facilitators as well as our esteemed guests who will be able to answer those questions. So we do have other two guests who will join the call and join the conversation as well a little bit later, in order for, if you have any questions, you can pop them in and we'll always try and get to them. My name is Bawini Likwala. I don't think I introduced myself, and I'm just an audit trainee trying to navigate through articles. And basically we are here. This was made for us and luckily by us, to be able to get into the conversation. So briefly today we have Lorna, who's going to be chatting around her role currently at the IDC. And basically we just want to find out from you, Lorna, how are you feeling today? You nervous?
Not at all. Hey, I'm so happy to be able to impart some knowledge on the youngsters. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, a little bit about yourself briefly. Who is Lorna about? What is Lorna, into, etc. briefly?
Okay, so I'm a Cape Townian who moved to Johannesburg in 2014 to start my articles. I'm now currently working at the IDC, as you've mentioned, as a deal maker. What I do basically on a daily basis, I'm assessing transactions for marketing, technical, and financial risk. And I do a lot of financial modeling, as well as interacting a lot with clients. So basically that's me, full of life, love for family. Yeah.
Oh, wow, interesting. So I mean, you just said that you're a deal maker, and not for me, it was when I saw your LinkedIn profile the first time I heard of what is a deal maker, and I didn't know that CAs could get into that space. How was it for you to get into that space? What did you have to do? What skill sets did you have to, I guess, show in order to get into that space?
Hello. Hello.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting you say that, because I remember the first time I heard about deal making as well was when I started my CA training. And for me, the title deal maker kind of took me off, but I was like, that's what I'm going to be, even though I didn't know what it is. So basically, at the IDC, obviously, we do a rotation around the company. So one of the rotations that I did was to shadow one of our deal makers. That's someone who basically goes out, because IDC is a funding institution, we basically look at business applications from various types of sectors. We basically assess a transaction for its economic merit. That's basically what we do. We structure deals, we bring in deals ourselves as well, and we present it to our credit committee.
That's interesting.
And sorry.
No, sorry to cut you short. Yes, go on.
No, that's fine. So you asked as well what it is that you need to have in order to become a deal maker, right? So obviously I had to learn those skills during my CA training. One of the things that you learn is your analytic skills. You need to have good negotiation skills as well, good communication skills, because you interact a lot with clients. Your financial acumen needs to be on point as well. So basically, those are the key skills that I've learned and that have helped me in my current role.
Just struggling with my connection a bit,
Oh,
but I heard everything you said in terms of your skill set and how your CA training kind of propelled you or kind of prepared you for the role that you have now. So I mean, what is interesting that is coming out of this is that obviously you were within the organization through your training as well. How important is it to have a sponsor? I mean, on Tuesday we had Nancy talk about how you find your village within an organization. How important was that for you when you were, I guess, upcoming and also in this training as well, in this role?
So personally, I didn't have a sponsor, but I'm really for that idea. I think having a sponsor does really accelerate one's progress within an organization. But what I did have is mentors from different levels of the organization. I mean, being a trainee, I had a senior trainee mentoring me, as well as a deal maker mentoring me, as well as a head level. So my advantage was having those people at my disposal. So whenever I needed assistance, I knew that at least I've got someone to talk to and rub anything off on. So that really helps. You can't, as a trainee, you have to have people that can help you. So it's very important. But I mean, I have aspirations that when I get to management level as well, one day I'll be a sponsor to someone. So definitely, I really think that having a sponsor does help in your career growth.
Yeah, that's very important. Just a kind reminder to our participants, if you guys have any questions, if you don't mind, please pop them in our chat box and we'll try and get Lorna to answer those questions. You spoke about obviously having a village and having people, as well as opportunities that you came about. Any opportunities that you have come about in your role now, as you're aspiring to be in a management position in the future, that you are probably grabbing, maybe an opportunity to study an MBA or an opportunity to do what opportunities has this role, and maybe even in your training, that has opened you up to?
So the current role, as I've mentioned, it exposes you to quite a lot of things. Firstly, you interact with clients from different sectors. So I've worked with people from the textiles and clothing industry. I've worked with mining, but now I'm currently situated in the tourism and services unit. So you get knowledge from different sectors, right? So in terms of opportunities, the organization does offer bursaries for your MBA studies. That's something that I want to pursue in the near future. So, and why I say this is a qualification that would benefit me in my current role, because I feel that it really prepares you for managing a department within an organization. And also, should you want to start your own business one day, it actually equips you. So being in this role that I am, you learn quite a lot about entrepreneurship. So that's another thing one can also branch into. So you can either become a head and eventually become an executive and CEO, or you can decide to actually, you know what, I've learned so much about this sector. Let me actually start something of my own, or actually let me look for something that hasn't been done yet and start. So because now you actually understand the business from the marketing side of things, which is you understand the customers, to your technical aspects, understanding what resources are needed in order to execute whatever idea that you have. When I say resources, you need your machinery. If you're in manufacturing, you need your staff, etc. And then in terms of the financials, you need to actually be able to budget for your business. Will this business be able to sustain itself? You know, that's what we as the IDC look at. We want to support business that are self-sustenance, you know. We offer loans, but at the same time, a loan has to come to an end. So we don't look at the short-term view, but rather we look at a long-term view. And also the advantage about working for the IDC is that it focuses more about on the developmental aspects. So as much as we look at the economic merit of a transaction, we also want to see the impact that it's making. How many jobs is it creating? Etc. You know, empowering Black people. And for me, I think that's what drew me to the corporation, because it's aligned to my principles. I believe strongly in empowering the previously disadvantaged people. So yeah, that's all for now.
That was
Yeah, I could go
very,
on. I could go on and on.
Yeah. That is very important. I just want to, and I can see the passion from you, but I also just want to understand from a technical side, as well as, you know, you spoke about the fact that you guys have to look at whether is it marketable, is it viable, is it a viable business as well. So from the how technically strong one has to be for this role. Do I need to be and I mean, this is more of a, it's more of a question of, do I need to be very well sound in IFRS or anything of that sort? How technically strong do I need to be for this role? And then maybe if you could also take us through, because you spoke about how relationships and managing people is so important. How important are also the soft skills as well for this role?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the technical aspects, you really need to be strong, because remember, once a client applies for funding, they present to us their financial statements. So as a CA, you are required to understand each and every note on that financials, and you are the one that interrogates it and properly analyzes those financials. So your accounting, your IFRS, it has to be on point, because any standard could appear on those financials, right? So that's very important. And then in terms of the soft skills, I mentioned that, I mean, in order to be successful in the role, you have to be able to work in a team. So it's not, you don't work in isolation. We work as a team. You'll have a CA, you'll have an engineer, you'll have a lawyer, you'll have an environmental specialist. So you interact with people who think differently. And so you need to be open and respect how each person's input into the project. So you really need to be able to work with people, and also be able to communicate. If you're not comfortable about something, say it. And if you're not, talk to someone senior who will help you. But there's always people that are willing to help. That's the beauty about the corporation that I work for.
And I can see that, thank you for such a beautiful response. And I can see that you are very, I guess, very outspoken as well, and you can communicate well. But has this always been the case with you? Did you have to kind of work on those skills? Because, you know, you
Yeah.
do find people, even in training now, that are just
Yeah.
naturally, you know, in their space, and
Yeah.
that's fine. Did you have to maybe like work on certain skills on yourself in
Yeah.
order to be able to perform the role better?
Yeah. So during my training, my CA training, I because I had mentors, as I said, they also kind of helped me with my confidence. Whenever I was unsure of something, I had to go speak to them. But funny enough, after qualifying as a CA, there's this expectation about you. You can't make mistakes. Or I don't know whether it was from everyone else or I just put those expectations on myself. But I was just so hard on myself that I felt that I can't make any mistakes. And that does take from your confidence if you see yourself making a mistake now and then. So I had to work on it. If you are unsure, because you don't get there knowing everything, you learn on the job. So the experience, spending time on whatever I wasn't sure on, helped me with the confidence. It hasn't always been like this, trust me. It took time, but I'm happy that I'm here now. Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. I don't know,
Yeah.
Z, if you can see any questions on your side, or if I'm missing anything, if you could just stop me and tell me. But like I'm very glad that you are saying that you are now comfortable in this role. But also, like, maybe in imparting, you said at the beginning of this webinar that imparting knowledge is such an important thing to you. Mentoring is such an important thing to you. In closing, what
Yes.
would you like to say to someone who's probably looked at this role, who doesn't know anything like me, about it? What would you say to them? Maybe top 3 things that they can look forward to in the
Yeah.
role, and how to best prepare for it. I mean, I'm coming from an
Yeah.
audit background. I've never worked with the IDC ever,
Yeah.
and I don't know what a deal maker is, and what should I expect, basically.
Okay. So I think my last words to everyone that would like to be a deal maker. Firstly, it's not impossible. Anyone can be a deal maker coming from audit or any other background. However, for those who are still studying, I always say when you're applying for a business analyst or deal maker or associate position, banks will always look at their current trainees. They first consider their current trainees before taking any outside people. So if you are certain that you want to go into investment banking, become a deal maker, you do your articles there. Because I think, but going into audit actually broadens your knowledge further. So that's also not a bad thing. And we have a lot of deal makers at the IDC who came from audit and who brought a different skill set that has helped, because we work in teams. It's brought broader skills into the team. So all I'm going to say is work hard, and don't be married to the idea of one financial institution. Big or small, apply everywhere, because there are benefits to either one. I mean, with the small companies, you find that you actually get much more exposure because you do a lot more than you would in a bigger company. I know we tend to say, no, I want to work for this certain bank, and if they don't accept me, then my life is falling apart. No, just get the experience, and you'll be fine. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Lorna. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your words of wisdom as well. And you guys, as I said, I haven't met Lorna. I've only met her virtually, but you guys can catch her on her LinkedIn. It's popping. And so I've been there as well. So if you guys really have any questions, etc., for her, you guys can pop it on our chat box while she's still here. And there's just one question that someone has just popped into our chat box. How do you balance a work I work as well as life, like the work-life balance, that big question that everyone tries to run away
and I'd like to believe that I've got a good balance. If there's one thing, I don't compromise on family time. So during the week, it's strictly work. If it means also working late for me to be able to not work over the weekends, that I'd rather do. So weekends, I love spending with my fiance. We'll do different things, go out. That's how I love to spend my weekends, or friends and family. But yeah, during the week, I try to put in as much as I can.
All right, cool. All I'm hearing is boundaries, basically. Boundaries is all lying in the boundaries.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Lorna. And please stay on the call if you can, maybe for any few more questions that we get from our chat box. But for now, I think I'm going to hand over to Zizile, who's going to take us through the second half of our session, basically with Adjoah as well as Naledi. Over to you, Zizile.
Thanks, Winnie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bawanile, and thank you, Lorna. That was an amazing session. I hope people really did enjoy it and learn as much as they can from it. My name is Zizile Mndebele, and I'm also a banker at ABSA. I look after healthcare and hospitality, but most importantly, I am a member of the professional development here at AWCA. And we're very excited to bring to you investment banking. I've got Naledi Gule, who's an executive at RMB Covest, and Adjoah Kwaw, who's a transactor for corporate debt and leverage finance at ABSA. So I thought maybe before I give them any question or let them to introduce themselves to you in terms of their background, I do a quick summary of what investment banking is about. Basically, Lorna has touched on it quite a bit in what she does at the IDC. As much as we labeled that session public sector, it was really from a funder perspective that she's funding from a public sector lens, being IDC. But essentially, when I think of investment banking, I think of, I actually Googled definition from Investopedia, which says it deals primarily with the creation of capital for other companies or governments and entities to aid them in the sale or acquisition of assets. So essentially, I look at it as a cycle. A company decides, or with the help of corporate finance advisory, which is also an investment banking product, in terms of whether they're going to be selling or acquiring assets. And from that point, they need to decide how they're going to fund if the decision is to expand the business and as a result acquire. So they need to decide how they're going to make that acquisition. Is it going to be through debt or equity? Because those are the two options. And there are various forms of debt within the investment banking world, so to speak. There is debt, which Adjoah is going to speak to. There is equity, which Naledi can touch on from a private equity perspective. And there's preference shares, debt capital markets, which we're not representing today. And then from the equity side, it's really just equity capital markets that can be used to do the funding of that acquisition. So I thought I'd just paint that overall picture. And so what Lorna was speaking about, really, at IDC, they do mostly loans, but they do also participate in equity in terms of funding for IRA. And so without actually wasting more time, I'd like to ask Naledi first to just do a brief introduction of herself, touching on her career path. She's a chartered accountant, of course, and then after her Adjoah, before we just have a discussion with them to further explore the investment banking world. And again, everyone, if you don't mind, do send some questions on the chat box. We're very keen to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Dee. I really appreciate that. As you mentioned, I'm in the equity side, so private equity. And essentially when people are looking for funding, there are two options. You can either do debt or equity, and there's always a combination. So the space that I'm in is private equity. Have been there for about 2.5 years now. I've been at RMB Covest, and prior to that, I was at ABSA. So I was in the corporate finance space, which is more of an advisory space. I've qualified as a CA through EY, so I did my articles, and have been really enjoying the space that I'm in terms of private equity. And just to give you a brief background of what is private equity, essentially, you know, the things that we do essentially is to invest. So we look as a shareholder to invest in companies, and we really take an equity risk. So the risks that you have are very different between debt and equity. In terms of equity, the equity risk is quite high. So we try and scrutinize, you know, the financials, because essentially you're taking the position of a shareholder. If anything goes wrong, there's a huge downside to that. So part of the work that we do is we need to originate. You know, Lorna spoke about deal makers, and essentially that's what we are on the equity side of it. So we need to originate, find deals. When we find good companies, it's quite hard to find really great companies and invest in those companies. So once you found a really great asset, part of it is also analyzing the financials and assessing the financials. But also on top of that, you know, for private equity viewpoint, management is very, very critical, because essentially I'm in RMB Corvest, and we sit on close to 55 investments between 12 transactions. So, you know, you're not able to be intimately involved. You can't run the business. So you rely a lot on management to run that business. And so part of it is, you know, sitting as directors on some of these boards, because you need to represent the shareholder base, which is RMB Corvest, and try and add value at that level. So, I mean, I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, it's a great, great industry, I must say.
Yeah, you look very happy.
You
I
do.
am.
Adjoah, do you want to do a quick intro as well?
Sure. So my name is Adjoah. I'm currently a debt transactor at ABSA in the investment banking division. I've been there for now 3 years, just over 3 years. I am still enjoying it. It is a tough environment, but I am enjoying it. And basically, you know, I think Z and Naledi have touched on, you know, what we do. We basically fund anything, acquisitions, you know, if a client wants to restructure their balance sheet, and that, you know, just basically that just means change the mix between equity and debt, you know, we would give our clients advice on, you know, funding solutions. So that's what we do on a daily basis. And, you know, part of our job is, you know, also, you know, very centered around the financial statements. So we analyze the financials just to make sure that we're comfortable with, you know, how the company is performing before we put debt into it. I think the main difference between debt and equity is that, you know, equity are residual holders of, you know, the business. So they actually take the higher risk. With the banks, you know, we put in a loan and we basically rank senior to any equity that's put into the business. So that's how we differ, how it differs between the two products. And yeah, and that's it. I'm not sure if you want me to add anything else. See?
No, that's fine as an intro, Adjoah. Thank you.
Okay.
I know you guys were both very technical, and just a reminder that we are dealing with third-year trainees at their stage. I did not know what you guys were talking about. I didn't know what debt or equity was. So maybe just to take it a step back, when you guys were in articles, you think that your exposure, I know Naledi, you probably did a bit of corporate finance at EY. I don't know if you did that initially or during your articles. Maybe just take us through that journey of breaking into corporate finance / private equity, Naledi, and yourself, Adjoah, in terms of investment banking, your journey from article days when you actually just had auditing as your base.
Sure. No, I completely understand. I mean, when I first started, I had no idea what private equity is. I had an idea of it, but you know, had a very different experience to what it actually is. But just in terms of how I started, so I started doing my articles at EY. Took the 3 years to complete articles, and afterwards I decided to do a secondment. So I was part of EY, so I did a secondment in New York, and I was in the financial services industry. And yeah, my time there was really just to you know, really gain experience, international experience, with the idea of, getting into corporate finance, because for me at the time, I wanted to go into front office. I didn't know what front office was. I just knew that front office was where I wanted to be. So I ended up, after my secondment, I decided to join the EY corporate finance house. So you have corporate finances in different shops. So you have it within an audit firm, and you also have it within a bank. And my advice would be, you know, if you're going to do corporate finance, if you want to do corporate finance, I would always say go to a bank first, because it gives you just, you know, there's another element of it in terms of commercial acumen. But I mean, the basis that I got at EY was really good, because you are involved in valuations, you are involved in front office work in terms of assessing and evaluating companies. But just from my experience and what I've gone through, if I had to do it over again, I would probably start at a bank in terms of doing corporate finance. So I was at EY corporate finance and learned a lot there, but I realized the need to go into a bank because, like I said, in terms of the additional advisory, you know, that banking experience is a lot better, just personally from my own personal experience. So I ended up going to ABSA and joined the corporate finance team there. I was there for, you know, not a long time, because the opportunity to get into private equity came about. You know, there was a position open at RMB Corvus, and it wasn't a private equity house. I've always wanted to do private equity. And the reason why I wanted to do corporate finance was really to get that base, to get into private equity. And essentially, you know, you take almost a viewpoint of putting in physical money when you're doing private equity, which is very different from an advisory sense, where you're not taking, if the client, you know, puts in money, you walk away, and if the deal goes bad, you know, you're not there to suffer those consequences. So with private equity, it's a bit different, where, you know, even when you've invested, you still have to monitor and assess the investment that you've made. And so that's also part of the entire experience. So yeah, just an advice, you know, definitely if you want to get into private equity, you need to have some sort of advisory experience, so either corporate finance or leverage finance. And I would say those two lend themselves very well to private equity. Probably leverage finance even more, because, you know, with leverage finance, you're taking an equity, you know, you're taking a risk in terms of debt. You're actually putting physical money. Whereas with corporate finance, you're actually doing more of an advisory role, essentially. I hope that's answered your question.
It did. Adjoah, on your side, please.
So for me, I think I definitely took the more scenic route. I finished articles, you know, with the idea that the world would be at my feet. I quickly learned that I actually had to look for something or want something. So what I did was, you know, I got back from articles. I did my articles at Deloitte in Pretoria. I went on secondment to the US, came back after 4 months, and, you know, I didn't have a job, right? I didn't really plan for it. And at the time, you know, I kind of like bounced around between like consulting, you know, then I joined ABSA as a consultant. And then, you know, later on, I joined the corporate investment bank as a product accountant. So I did quite a few things, you know, before I landed on the idea of, you know, actually becoming or joining investment banking. So what actually happened was I had a line manager who encouraged me to explore the rest of the bank, because he said, you know what, you're too young to just be passing journals every month, you know, which I agreed with at the time. So, you know, I started exploring, and, you know, I was very lucky that, you know, the people that I spoke to were very open, and they were very willing, you know, just to share their experiences with me. So, you know, I had to like physically, you know, put in meeting requests into people's diaries that were actually strangers to me. But, you know, that was a bit daunting, but I did, because I was interested in sort of like moving my career forward. I did that, and I was advised to join credit risk, which I did. I think once you set your mind on, doing something, you kind of just end up doing it, So I think, just pursue your goals and you will actually get into whatever it is that you choose to do. So I joined credit risk and I stayed there for about 2 years. And then, the opportunity to join the front office came about, they were looking for people. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't have the skills yet. I'm not ready, but I remember it was Z actually who encouraged me to apply, So I applied and I got the role, and I've been there ever since. So for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do, but I think you just maybe make one decision and then it propels you further and you just keep going. So, my advice to you is if you don't know, you are amongst many, you just kind of have to make a decision on what it is you want to do every day. And, that's kind of what I did. I think in the first few roles, I knew that I didn't want to be an auditor. I didn't want to stay in finance. And, I wanted to use the skills that I had acquired in articles and during my studies. And, I think my role now I'm able to, you really look at the financials, you do the financial management that you learned in varsity. So for me, it was the perfect role and is kind of like the perfect role. So I'll pause there. I'm just worried that I ramble on for too long, but yeah.
No worries. You touched on something there, Adjoah, that I'd like you and Naledi to just revert on. In terms of your skills acquired at varsity as well as on your training, what are those key skills that you can say you carry on into your roles today? So thinking of trainees today, they've been auditing, they've been learning a lot of different industries if they're not focused on one industry. What is it that you still carry today? I know for me, it's really the work ethic from articles, because that actually goes a long way for us.
No, it does.
Yeah. You want to give it a go first, Adjoah?
Sure.
Yeah.
I would say, I think one thing that I didn't realize that I was doing in articles was you communicate a lot with management, so, there's that interaction that you have to ask them questions about, your work paper. So that's a skill that not everyone has, the ability to speak to management. I think definitely, from my studies, I think Lorna touched on it earlier, I think don't take for granted the ability to look at a set of financial statements and understand, how you get to those numbers or how you get to that disclosure. It goes a long way. And I think that's what distinguishes CAs in investment banking, is that we truly understand, those financials. So even those things, I think, if I look back, one thing that I would have done was maybe invest in, just interacting with management, because you do that a lot. And, that helps you to build relationships with your clients, which really takes you a long way when you need to originate a deal. So I think those are my two take homes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I mean, I would definitely agree with that, Adjoah. I mean, for me as well, in terms of the skills that really carried me through articles, was just the questioning mind. You put that into practice, and ultimately when you're analyzing financials, you always need to ask yourself why have they done this? What are the reasons behind this? So, during articles, you're actually training that questioning mind, and that you can use in any situation, anywhere. Another thing that I really think that really helps in terms of presenting, because I mean, through private equity, you need to present deals, you need to actually justify why you think this is a great asset. In fact, you need to advocate. It's more than just justify. You need to actually advocate and fight for your deals. And so part of, audit training is really in terms of, finding audit findings, you need to come through with facts and justify the reasons why you've got some of these audit findings. And that you use anywhere. I mean, a lot of the work that we do is really about questioning things and justifying why you think this way. And also just in terms of the leadership skills, I mean, right in the beginning, when you're a second year article clerk, you're looking after the first year article clerks. And when you're a third year, you're kind of a supervisor and you're supervising the entire team. And so that lends itself through taking initiative, leadership, and that you can use in the boardroom when you're, sitting as a board member. Essentially, you need to use all of those skills. So these are lifelong skills that you use everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Lorna. Sorry, my connection is a bit bad. I'm just going to go to the questions on the chatter box before we continue. Babala asked, how did you prepare yourselves to move from articles to financial services, and how do you handle the steep learning curve? I think it applies to both of you, the question.
Well, I'll go first. So I kind of just went into it. I don't think I knew what I was getting into when I decided to move into financial services. I just kind of thought, okay, this sounds great. Let me do it. I can do it. And then I did it, I think with the steep learning curve, I think for me, I think, when you qualify as a CA, there is this air about you. I think maybe it's something that we put on ourselves, just the fact that we think that we need to know everything, right? I would say, if you're going to go, if you want to get into investment banking, you have to understand that there is a steep learning curve, right? And just try to enjoy the process of learning, kind of just, surrender to it and decide, what, actually I'm going to learn, and it's going to broaden my skill set and my knowledge base, and just go with it. And and then you should be fine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it's a question of, someone says there's nothing as a silly question, and I'm a huge believer on that. Ask the questions. If you can't explain something to your family member, if you can't break it down in simple terms, then you don't fully understand what you're doing. And so you need to ask the questions where you are able to fully understand. And the steep learning curve, everyone starts somewhere. So you need to really just ask those silly questions. And even to this day, I'm always doing that, always asking fundamental questions, because it increases my knowledge. So I'm a big believer of just ask. If you're not sure, just ask.
Yeah, no, I like that. There is no such thing as a silly question. And I think everyone must take that away, if anything, because you start from the bottom. And I always say that as CAs, we train to think fast and to grab concepts quite quickly. So if something is explained to you, you're able to understand it with quite a lot of ease, in my view. Not that I'm blowing our heads, but it's not an easy qualification to obtain. So nothing is too impossible to understand. Another question, I think this one is directed to you, Adjoah. It says, how did your role in finance prepare you for your current role when you're in PCG?
So I would say that I was very clear that I didn't want to do that anymore. So it helped me to move on very quickly, to make a decision and to take action very quickly. But besides that, I think, there were times during that role where I had to speak up. I think, PCG is, basically you're looking at numbers and you're analyzing the numbers to see if they make sense. And so, you still use that analytical mind of yours, not as much as you do in investment banking, but, it's kind of like this, it was like a stepping stone, so to speak. So I was analyzing, but I thought, you know what, I can actually do more. And that kind of propelled me to look for something else and something a little bit more complex. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, Naledi, you mentioned that as part of your role, you have to sit on boards and all of those things. Your role sounds quite complex. Give us a day in the shoes of Naledi. What does your typical day look like?
It's always different. I mean, it's really, no, it really is. Essentially, I could think that a week will be very quiet. And something comes up, and when I mean by something, it's usually a deal, like a new deal. So yeah, a typical day would be, I would kind of look at read board packs, so prepare for a board meeting, or I would essentially analyze a financial statement of a prospective company that we might be investing in. So look at the financials, analyze the management structure, try and come and develop a deal structure, you know, how much we will put in, how much management will put in, and then organize a meeting to maybe meet with management, assess them, see if, you know, there's a gel within our culture and their culture in terms of would we be good shareholders for them. And yeah, I mean, constantly, you know, you get emails saying, hi, I'm looking for funding to possibly invest in my company, looking for either BE funding or looking for, you know, just normal funding. Can you assist? And essentially, it's quite difficult to find great companies. So you need to look at a lot of companies before you find a great company to invest in. You know, entrepreneurs work a lot. So it's you know, finding that great company is the majority of the work that I do.
Yeah. Do you do any committees?
Yes. So you know, sitting as part of sitting as a board member, you know, you're part of either an audit committee, REM committee, you know, just looking at obviously and assessing different structures within the company, how you can possibly add value. Sometimes, you know, during board meetings, you know, the management members might say, you know, we're trying to open a door for this prospective company. Do you guys know anyone in this industry? So it's part of, you know, part of that, trying to add value where you can, because ultimately you're not involved in the operations, but you need to add value, either through saying, listen, in terms of how you're using your cash, you know, it's not effective. These are probably other ways that you could use your cash and making the balance sheet more efficient. So yeah, part of that is sitting on committees.
Okay. Did you hear me?
Sorry, it was a bit
We
loud.
can't hear you. We couldn't hear you for a bit of a second there.
Okay, am I back online now?
Yes, you're perfect now.
Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks so much, Naledi, for that. Adjoah, if you can give us a view in a day in your shoes, a typical day as a leverage finance transactor.
So typical day as a typical day in my life, work life is, you know, just, you know, trying to originate deals. So, you know, that includes like, you know, trying to build relationships, preparing pitches, looking at financial statements, you know, just to analyze how much debt we can put into this business, you know, can, assessing the debt serviceability of the business, assessing, you know, we also look at things like, you know, who are their shareholders, you know, are they supportive of the business? Are they there for the long haul? You know, because obviously we want to partner with the shareholders to fund the business, you know, so we look at all aspects. We look at the industry, you know, what's happening in the industry. How do we, you know, we try to forecast what we think is going to happen going forward with the business, because obviously that impacts cash flows and that impacts the client's ability to pay our debt. So that's basically what I do. It's origination, it's pitching, it's building client relationships, it's analyzing the balance sheet, it's financial modeling, you know, it's also coming up with, you know, bespoke products, you know, for our clients, because not one size doesn't fit all, you know, so a lot of the time you spend a lot of time structuring the debt so that it fits your client's profile. So that's typically what I do every day. Yeah, it gets quite busy. And like Naledi said, sometimes, you know, you think it's going to be a very quiet week and then something lands and it needs to be, you know, turned very quickly. So then you're working late nights, long hours. So yeah, but it's exciting. I think it's a great role, because you know you get to use all corners of your brain, you know, so yeah, I really enjoy it.
What would you say is one skill that you have that makes you successful in your role?
I'm persistent. I don't take no for an answer, because I think people will tell you there are a lot of reasons not to do a deal. You can really find something if you're really looking. So you need to be persistent and you need to keep kind of like pushing, you know, for your deal. You need to advocate for your deal. You know, it's very similar to what Naledi was saying earlier, that you are actually an advocate. You need to be able to tell people why you think that we should put capital into this business, you know, and why you believe that you're going to get it back, you know. So I think that's the one skill that will make you a successful transactor.
I have to 100% agree with that. Persistency, it's key. It's honestly like it's the biggest thing. You know, in terms of advocating, in terms of also just working hard. Sometimes you find that you're in a competitive process. You know, you're not the only one bidding for this asset in terms of this company. There's another, you know, competitor. And when it comes to competitive processes, then you honestly need to add something else. You need to come up with, you know, a creative way of adding value to the management team. So if you're persistent, sometimes it's not about who has the highest price when you're selling. It's also about, you know, in terms of working hard, management can see that you're hungry. Management can see that, you know, you're going to try and add value to the company. Management can see that, you know, you, in terms of your portfolio, you're going to try and do the best to create, you know, a portfolio that might assist with bolt-ons. So it's about persistency, like honestly, in terms of pushing hard and really working hard. So I definitely agree with Adjoah on that, 100%.
So it's persistency, or persistent English. Sorry. So I completely agree with that. If you don't back yourself in investment banking, no one will. It's really a wild world. And someone actually just texted and said, when they think of investment banking, they think of the Wolf of Wall Street. Should one have a high or huge risk appetite?
Sorry, please, can you repeat that?
The question is, should one have a high or a huge risk appetite to venture into investment banking? So I suppose what this person is trying to say is that as an investor on your side, Naledi, do you think you're risk averse, or you happy to take risk? But I suppose it's always calculated risk at the end of the day.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's calculated risk. So you are, I mean, there's always risk with equity. And like Adjoah had said, you know, equity typically has higher risk because you are a shareholder. Debt ranks higher, so they get their money first. And then we get paid afterwards. So for us, we get into the upside of the business. So if the business does really, really well, you know, that's where equity participants feature. So you need to have an element of risk, especially with private equity, because ultimately you need to believe in the story that the business is going to grow. It's you know, Kwaw's recently invested in a drinks business. So it's an energy drinks business. And essentially, you know, the growth prospects are very, very high. And so for a business like that, you're gonna pay, you know, a higher price than a business that's not growing. But you can see that business will grow. And so that's the element of risk that you're willing to take, that, you know, you see the prospects, you see how management are working hard. And so there is definitely, you need to, for private equity, certainly you need to take an element of risk.
Yeah. Story of the company.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, do you have a different view or anything to add in terms of the risk appetite in your role?
So I think it's definitely about taking calculated risks. I think at the end of the day, you know, yes, we don't really share in the upside of the, you know, the business, but if I can give you an example, how it works is, you know, on day one, you're assessing what could happen in the future. So say, for instance, with, you know, Naledi's example, you look at a company, they look like they're growing, and then tomorrow there's a sugar ban, right? And this energy drink is full of sugar, and that's what appeals to clients, right? And then they stop selling, right? Then that risk is also shared by the banks in some way or form, right? Because I think ultimately when we lend money, we lend it with the view that we're going to get it back, right? But if the business doesn't perform, we won't get our money back. That's, you know, that's really what the long and the short of it. So I think when we assess companies that we invest in, essentially, but we provide a loan, and obviously we rank senior to the equity, right? But we're still taking a risk. But it's about, really doing your research, understanding the industry, understanding how management works, understanding how they've performed, so a lot of the time you look at how the entity has performed previously. I think that's maybe a little different in Naledi's world, but with us, we really fund like well-established businesses, just because we need to have that security that management has proven themselves in the past, to generate and carry that business. So it's all about taking calculated risks, because I think, there are lots of transactors and lots of bankers that have lost money before. And I think that's a very painful process when you are trying to get your money back in a distressed situation. So yeah, it's definitely about trying to assess the risk as best you can when you're doing the deal.
I mean, Adjoah, you touched on something quite important there as well, because with equity, there's also different types of risks. So with private equity, it is more established businesses, but with venture, venture capital, it's a lot riskier, because there you have startups. So we don't necessarily do startup businesses. There are some equity houses that do, startups, and there's a high risk. So with private equity, it's still high, not as high as venture capitalism. So yeah.
For bringing that in, Naledi. Another question from the chat box is, what would you say is the most fulfilling about your role? What do you enjoy most?
I would say the client interaction, and I get to solve problems. I love problem solving. I like looking at a set of financials and seeing how a deal will work. So for me, it's problem solving and just interacting with clients. That's what I enjoy the most.
I definitely like the chase of finding a deal. Definitely, I must say, like, meeting up, because it's a private industry. You're not going to find what's the next great deal by reading the newspaper. So a lot of it is networking. A lot of it is meeting up with people in the industry. Networking is really important. So I really enjoy the chase of, finding a deal. It's difficult to find. It's not easy. Not at all. You need to kiss a lot of frogs before, in terms of trying to find deals. You need to really look hard, because it's very difficult to find really great businesses out there. But I think the chase of finding one, I really enjoy that part. And also understanding what's happening in the market, because it's a private industry. You need to really, have your ear to the ground. And part of that is meeting people within the industry, meeting brokers, meeting people within leverage finance as well. And so that part of it lends itself to the people skills.
Yeah. I guess it's exactly what Adjoah was saying as well. It's the relationships that you build, and it's networking that you do as part of your job that gives you joy. I hope that answers your questions, Kumen. And another question, just to take us back to articles, given our audience is mainly still doing articles, how do you see the above hardships and long hours during your articles? What were the most frustrating challenges during articles?
I don't.
Blocked it out. I know I
I
have.
don't remember. Can I say that? So I think for me, what was frustrating for me, I think for me it was, I studied, and I found it very challenging, and my studies it was quite challenging for me. And so I think when I got to articles, I expected to be met with even more challenges, or like the challenges that I was expecting. So I think, you finish your varsity days, and you're racing against time, you're doing all these exams, doing all of these calculations. But what I found was that articles was a different type of challenge, right? That I wasn't really expecting. And so for me, that frustrated me a little bit. But I think eventually you adjust, you realize, okay, it's a different type of challenge, and you kind of adjust to it, and then you realize it's about building relationships. It's about you know, it's about something different. You're not studying anymore. So I think for me, just because I was expecting something different from my articles, it was a bit frustrating in the beginning. But you know, I think quickly I learned that, you know, it's a different type of challenge. So, you know, just go with it and try and, you know, show up as best as you can. Yeah.
I mean, my frustrating part was, you know, you really, during articles, you're really reliant on a lot of people. I mean, so, you know, in varsity, you were studying. If you did well, it was because you worked hard and you studied hard. But now during articles, you have to ask people for information. And, you know, the frustrating thing was, you know, people found that sometimes you were a bit of a nuisance. You would ask questions and they would ignore you. And so that was very frustrating for me, because I'm like, I'm actually trying to do my job here. So that part of it was very frustrating. I mean, having to send multiple emails as per my email, you know, I think that part of it, I don't miss at all. You still have to do that, obviously. I still have to ask for information. But now I find that people are more willing, because ultimately they want you to buy their company. Whereas before you were a bit of a nuisance. So yeah.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I hate working to new clients because they think that look that oh, here they are with their nuisance and their questions and not understanding our business. And now when you walk in as a bank from an investment banking side, clients are actually happy to have you because you're there to provide solutions. You're there to hear what their pain points are. So I honestly, I know the question wasn't for me, but I also love that part, that we now like the good cops, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another question is, what advice would you give to someone who's an introvert in terms of what they can do to thrive in an investment banking?
So I am an introvert.
Yeah, I was about to say, I just take that one.
Yeah, I am an introvert, but I think it's just about, so, you know, the advice that I give myself is, you know, this is what I want to do. And sometimes I will be nervous while I'm doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway, you know. So I believe that I have something to add. And so, you know, I'm willing to show up and to add value. So I think don't let that, you know, deter you from investment banking. I know that maybe it's marketed as a very extroverted environment, and it is to some extent, but it doesn't mean that you can't add anything as an introvert. Yeah. So definitely go for it. If it's something you want to do, definitely go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with private equity, you need to present deals in front of a lot of people who scrutinize and ask you difficult questions. And if you answer them, you know, they say, no, but why exactly are you saying this? So sometimes you can come across difficult personalities, and you still need to stand your ground. So I think you can be, you know, I think the most important thing is you don't necessarily need to be extroverted. You just need to be able to back yourself, and that comes with confidence, ultimately. I think you can still be introverted and confident at the same time. So part of it is honestly building that confidence, and it comes with practice. I mean, my first investment committee, I was terrified. I was asking questions in a shaky voice, and, you know, but I still did it. So part of it is really just doing it, just, you know, not caring to a certain extent, and just asking a question, even if you're terrified.
Yeah, and I do believe that practice makes perfect in this kind of environment. And as you said, Naledi, you need to back yourself. I always think if you cover all bases in terms of preparation, if you go into committee, yes, you're still nervous and still shaky, but because you know your facts, that gives you a lot of confidence. So if you back yourself up, your confidence levels will definitely increase.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Trainees are also very keen in understanding if they should study further post-qualifying as CAs to achieve in different industries, in this instance, investment banking. Have you guys studied further post your designation as CAs? And what would you say, or what do you think of doing MBA, Masters in Finance, the likes? Do those really act as catalysts in terms of progression in the investment banking industry?
So no, I haven't studied further. But I do believe that if you do decide to study further, that it should be something that you want to do for yourself. So it should be more of a personal goal. I don't think it's a prerequisite to joining investment banking. I think in investment banking, the really good transactors are the ones that can originate deals, so that's the skill that you need in investment banking. You don't really need a lot of degrees around you to do that. It's really about on the job learning, training, and building those relationships with your clients. But definitely, if you want to study further, I know I've considered it a few times. Do it for yourself. Do it, and maybe if you want to specialize in a specific industry, maybe invest more time there. I think we're all, as a chartered accountant, the financials quite well, so you don't really need to go and do another finance degree on top of that. So that would be my advice in terms of further learning.
Yeah, I mean, I did start, so after my CAs, I did start a CFA. So, but I realized, well, personally for myself, I stopped it because for me, on the job training was probably the best part for me. So the moment I was able to get into private equity, I didn't really see the need to do it further, because I was getting and learning so much from on the job. But I definitely would, advise people to study further if you have, if you have that need to want to do it. But definitely, it doesn't take away from on the job training. But I do believe you can do both. Ultimately, you can get on the job training and study further. And always, that always puts you ahead of other people. In terms of additional qualifications. So yeah, definitely would encourage it.
Yeah. CFA, and thinking about a trainee coming straight from auditing and trying to get into corporate finance, for example, or any other product within investment banking. Do you think CFA will give them an advantage to a trainee who's just straight from audit? I know you went to corporate finance rather with already having had experience in corporate finance at EY. So without that, do you think CFA would have actually put you in a better position?
I do think so. I've been in interviews, I've interviewed other people as well. And some of the remarks from other fellow panelists, is, they have an additional CFA. So I wouldn't, in terms of having that additional qualification, it definitely does put you at an advantage, but it never takes away from on the job. I think, as a potential candidate, I would probably take someone who has experience over, that additional CFA. But if I'm comparing just two people with exact same experience and one of them has a CA and a CFA, I would lean towards a candidate that has both.
Thank you. Going into your growth, into your careers now, would you say that a mentor and a sponsor has helped you along the way? As Bawanile said earlier, Nancy spoke about finding your village in your corporate environment that can assist you navigate and get ahead, where doors could be open for you that wouldn't otherwise be open without those relationships.
100%, yeah, definitely. And a sponsor doesn't end when you're young. My sponsors have sponsors. That's how it works in corporates. So I'm a strong proponent of having a sponsor, because ultimately people, do business with people that they like. So I think honestly, you need to have someone who pushes you who also increases your exposure. And also starting out, you're not necessarily going to originate deals. So, you know, you need someone who's going to assist you with originating, giving you contacts, because you don't necessarily get contacts, you know, just by existing. You get contacts through networks, and that, you know, a sponsor has a huge role to play in advising you there. So, you know, sponsorship happens. I've seen it right at top levels. You know, MPs have sponsors, and you know, that's ultimately how I think you get ahead further.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. You know, sponsors are people that really speak for you when you're not in the room, you know, so, and, you know, and I think that's, you know, the value of having a sponsor. Sometimes you have sponsors that you don't really know about, you know, which is always a great thing, you know, if they're spreading the good word about you. But it's, you know, it is really important to build those relationships with people so that they can speak of you, because, you know, maybe they go to rooms that you're not invited into. So it's quite important. I have a sponsor and a mentor. My mentor kind of is someone that I go to for advice, and you know, I think sometimes I can be quite hot-headed, and he'll like kind of calm me down and, you know, bring me to the center and give me advice, you know, on how to approach, you know, challenges that I'm experiencing in my job. So I think they're both important roles. I think, and it definitely changes as you know, as you evolve in your, or as you move forward in your career. You know, you can have many sponsors, many mentors. You know, it just depends on, you know, what you're trying to do. I like the, you know, the point that Naledi brings up. You know, in our roles, we have to do a lot of origination, and I've never actually thought about using those relationships to kind of like build my network. You know, so that's actually a really good point, that if you're going to be in investment banking, you need to build relationships with clients, and a lot of the time you're not just going to build relationships with a client by just being in an investment banking team. It goes beyond that. You need to network. So that's a very good point. Yeah.
While we're speaking of sponsors, my sponsor is my line manager. So my next question is, have you had a difficult manager that kind of stands in your way in what you're trying to achieve, and how do you work around that?
Naledi, would you like to go for it?
Look, I think I wouldn't say line manager. I've come across difficult personalities. You know, I've come across difficult colleagues, and people that sometimes don't want the best for you. It happens. We work in an industry with people, and when you work with people, you're going to have difficult personalities. So yes, I've definitely experienced that. And part of it is just remaining true to yourself, still having integrity, but being firm. So you can, you know, not be a pushover essentially. So, you know, trying to confront the issue without being confrontational. So that is a very tricky line, and it really comes with people skills and working in teams. So yes, definitely have had those experiences, and you know, I don't think it will end. You know, you might come across difficult clients. It might not be your line manager, it might be clients, it might be colleagues. For me, it was a colleague, and definitely confronted that. But I think, you know, in a very respectful way, so that you're still able to work with the person afterwards. It's just about identifying an issue and saying, listen, I didn't quite, you know, is this what you meant when you said this? Essentially asking it in a way where you give them an opportunity to redeem themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with Naledi. Like in the environment that we're in, and I think in any environment you will come across difficult people. But for me, it really is about staying true to yourself, and also just remembering what you are there to do, you know, and the goal that you're trying to achieve. You know, you really can't let what someone says or what someone does, you know, stop you from doing what it is that you set out to do, you know? So you kind of just need to find a way of dealing with it in the most non-confrontational way possible, so that you can work with these people, because ultimately, you know, once you've had that engagement with them, they don't disappear, unfortunately. You know, they're still there. So, you know, it's really about being professional, but you know, but being firm and setting those boundaries to say, actually, you know what, I'm not, this isn't working well, you know, so that they know that, you know, next time that when they're doing it, that, you know, how you feel about it. So yeah, so that's something that I think you'll experience that everywhere. I've actually experienced that in all of the roles that I've been in, you know, investment banking, finance, auditing, it's always there. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. The message that I got from that is that you need to deal with this upfront and nip it in the bud as soon as possible so it doesn't occur again.
It probably will, but
Um,
fine.
yeah, do
It will.
oh, please.
It
Maybe
definitely will.
again.
It will happen again, but you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. We are about to close, so maybe I should just ask you guys if you want to add anything along with your closing words of wisdom to aspiring trainees wanting to be in private equity, investment banking. What would you tell a young you in them?
I would say go for it. You know, like there's so many, you can come up with so many reasons why you shouldn't do something, but ultimately you need to make that decision that this is what you want to do, and you need to go for it. You need to pursue it, because otherwise it won't happen. So you need to make it happen, you know. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Definitely. I'd say the same thing. Just go for it. I think one of you know, my regrets was just probably staying at you know, an audit firm too long, because I thought you know, it was probably a safer route, and I wasn't too sure what I wanted. But you know, the moment you realize what you want, I would say just go for it. Just get into the role and do it, because ultimately you're the only person standing in your way.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you so much, Naledi and Adjoah, for your time this evening. I know you guys have a busy schedule. Thanks for making time for us. And I think that is all. We don't have any other further questions. So I would like to take this chance or opportunity to thank all our attendees who've been with us from session 1, when we spoke about whether they should stay or leave the audit firm, and up to the session where we had assumed they want to leave, assisting them putting the CVs together and putting their best foot forward. And so what we hope we've achieved with these last 2 sessions, especially addressing different industries that they can tap into outside of audits, is that we've assisted them make a decision and be confident when they deal with recruiters. Because the main aim of this career lift up really is that we don't want you to be dictated by recruiters who are trying to make a fee out of you. You need to make your informed decision in terms of your career, where you want to go, because the next role really is really important in building who you want to be in the next 10 years, 5-10 years. So we do have a few events as well under IWCA. So we encourage you to sign up with us on our website. And we host different initiatives, including mentorship, networking events that could assist you further as you grow in your career. And lastly, we will be having the recording available. I think our office will be able to distribute to all our attendees, and we may have it on our website as well. So feel free to download these. And if anyone has any questions or they were shy to ask on the chatter box, we are available for you guys to, if you have any further questions. Naledi and Adjoah are also on LinkedIn. You can stop them and Google them. You've seen their faces. And then, yeah, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening and weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, Lorna.